It's March 4th, and the strange side of history awaits. Today, we have survival drifting across endless water, a mountain swallowing men without warning, and a political system unraveling in a single disastrous moment. Let's begin. On March 4th, 1973, British sailors Maurice and Marilyn Bailey were sailing peacefully across the Pacific Ocean aboard their 31-foot yacht, the Arlen, near the remote waters of the Galapagos Islands. The sea was calm, the sky was clear, and then, without warning, something enormous rose from the depths. A sperm whale slammed into the hull. The impact shattered the boat's structure. Water rushed in, and within minutes, the Arlen, their home, and only shelter in the vast Pacific, was sinking beneath them. With almost no time to think, the Baileys scrambled into a small inflatable life raft, watching their yacht disappear into the ocean. And then suddenly, they were alone. Just two people drifting on one of the largest oceans on the Earth. Days turned into weeks, and the couple survived on rainwater, collecting every drop they could from passing storms. Despite being lifelong vegetarians, desperation forced them to catch fish, turtles, and seabirds, using crude hooks made from bent safety pins. The sun burnt their skin, their raft slowly leaked, hunger and dehydration grew worse and worse with every passing day. Ships occasionally appeared on the horizon, but none of them saw the tiny raft in the endless blue. For 118 days, the Baileys drifted nearly 1,500 miles across open ocean. By the time help finally arrived, they were skeletal, exhausted, and barely alive. On June 30th, a South Korean fishing vessel, the Wellomi 306, spotted the drifting raft and pulled them aboard. Against impossible odds, the Baileys had survived one of the longest open ocean raft ordeals ever recorded. On March 4th, 1910, high in the frozen wilderness of the Selkirk Mountains in British Columbia, Canada, a crew of railway workers battled the night to clear snow from the tracks at Rogers Pass. A small avalanche had already buried the line earlier that day. By late evening, dozens of men were still working under lantern light, determined to reopen the railway before morning. Nearby, a heavy 91-ton locomotive waited on the tracks, but above them, hidden in the darkness, thousands of tons of unstable snow clung to the silent mountainside. Around 11 p.m., the mountain finally gave way. Without warning, a second avalanche roared down the opposite side of the valley, far larger and far deadlier than the first. The force was unimaginable, and the locomotive itself was lifted nearly 49 feet in the air, hurled off the tracks like a toy. In seconds, the worksite was gone. 62 rail workers were killed, buried beneath thousands of tons of debris in what remains the deadliest avalanche disaster in Canadian history. Yet, somehow, one man survived. A locomotive fireman was thrown clear by the shockwave, landing beyond the main path of destruction. When the snow settled, he stood alone in the silent wreckage, only witness to a catastrophe that had erased his entire crew. The tragedy was so devastating that the railway would eventually abandon the dangerous route through Rogers Pass, replacing it years later with a tunnel deep inside the mountain itself. On March 4th, 1933, inside the Grand Parliament building of Vienna, something strange began to unfold. Austria's National Council gathered for what should have been a routine debate about the railway workers' strike. The chamber was tense, but ordinary. Then the argument turned procedural. The President of Parliament, Karl Renner, wanted to vote on a controversial motion, but according to the rules, the presiding officer was not allowed to vote. So Renner did something unusual. He resigned his position, just long enough to cast his vote. The first vice president stepped forward to take the chair, but he too wanted to vote, so he resigned as well. Then the second vice president, incredibly, he did the same thing. Within minutes, all three leaders of the Austrian parliament had resigned. The chamber suddenly faced a bizarre constitutional problem. Without a presiding officer, the rules provided no way to reconvene the session. Parliament had accidentally paralyzed itself. Chancellor Engelbert Dollfuss immediately seized the moment. Police were ordered to prevent lawmakers from meeting again, and within days, Dollfuss began ruling by emergency decree. What began as a technical argument over parliamentary proceedings had quietly ended Austria's democracy. And from that strange night, a dictatorship would rule the country until Austria eventually became absorbed in Nazi Germany 5 years later. Another day, another strange bite from history. Like, comment, and subscribe. Your next Eerie dose is just a day away.